At my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law was completely absent. Later, she posted a picture with the gardener in Cancun, cocktail in hand, with the caption, "Enjoy life while you can." That's when a message from my son hit me harder than a punch to the gut. "Dad, come to my house now." Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine laying my son to rest without his wife by my side. That dreary Tuesday morning, I found myself at the funeral home, surrounded by a small gathering to remember Richard. I kept glancing towards the entrance, searching for some sensible reason that Olivia, my daughter-in-law of 8 years, wasn't there. Maybe it was traffic or a delayed flight. Anything would have been better than nothing. The funeral director approached me with that calm, composed manner they all seem to have. "Mr. Morrison, should we hold off for a bit longer?" Trying to keep my emotions in check, I replied, "No, let's begin." There were 37 folks there to pay respects to my son. I counted each one. 37 caring souls paid tribute to Richard. But Olivia was nowhere in sight. I ended up giving the eulogy myself. There wasn't another option. I talked about Richard's childhood, his love for baseball, the pride I felt when he graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern, and when he started his consulting business. I didn't mention his recent battle with anxiety or how he'd grown distant from everyone, including me. Nor did I touch on his marriage faltering, pretending I hadn't noticed. As people walked by to offer condolences, I overheard whispered questions. "Where's Olivia? Isn't she his wife? It's awful she didn't come." Their whispers constricted my chest even more. If only they understood. After the service, I headed alone to the cemetery, a hearse carrying Richard's body behind me. My thoughts should have been focused on my final goodbyes to him, but instead my mind was stuck on the mystery of Olivia's absence. When I got home later that night, I couldn't help but stare at my cell phone in the kitchen. I had tried contacting Olivia on 6 occasions, but every call went straight to voicemail. My text got no reply either. Richard's death had been abrupt. They said a heart attack at 34, thanks to stress. When the hospital informed us, I called Olivia right away. She sounded appropriately shocked, crying on the phone, asking about arrangements, insisting she'd be back from her sister's in Phoenix soon. That was 4 days back. For the first time, I opened my laptop and ventured into the world of social media. Richard valued his privacy, so I hadn't been on Facebook or Instagram much. Yet grief makes people do unexpected things. Finding Olivia's Instagram was simple. Her profile picture was still from anniversary dinner last year, her and Richard beaming, his arm around her, radiating happiness. I scrolled through her recent posts, heart pounding for reasons I wasn't quite sure of. Photos from Phoenix showed outings with her sister and shopping after Richard's death, none displaying any sign of mourning. Then there it was. Just 3 hours earlier, right during my son's eulogy, a photo stopped me cold. Olivia, bikini-clad, a drink in hand, on a beach under the bright sun, head thrown back with laughter, looking carefree. Miguel, their gardener, was beside her, arm draped over her shoulder, both smiling widely. The place, Cancun, Mexico. Her caption made my hands tremble. "Life's too short not to live it. Cheers to new beginnings." I stared at that photo for what felt like forever, taking in those words again and again. As I stood by the grave, shoveling earth onto my son, his wife was living it up in Mexico with another man. The comments were like stabs to the heart. Friends applauding her, asking if she was finally happy, saying she deserved it. One comment from her, when my sister's text popped up on my phone, it twisted my stomach into knots. I was so glad the chaos was finally over. "Miguel is the perfect match for you. It's all wrapped up. The drama's done. Was my son's death just some sort of theatrical finale?" I closed my laptop in frustration and headed for the liquor cabinet, which I hardly ever touch. I poured myself a generous shot of whiskey, trying to process everything. 8 years of marriage, 8 long years of dinners, holidays, birthdays. Olivia had become a real part of our family, like my own daughter. I even backed her up when her arguments with Richard got intense, preaching that marriage called for patience and understanding. So much for that advice. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. But somehow I already knew who it was. Dad, get to my place now. We need to talk. Don't tell anyone. Richard. My phone dropped to the kitchen floor, the screen snapping as it hit. I couldn't have cared less. My hands were shaking so bad that picking it up was an ordeal. I read that message over and over. This had to be some sick mistake or a cruel prank. Could the sender be messing with Richard's phone? The number didn't match, and who would pull such a heartless stunt? I grabbed my car keys, my hands still trembling. I had to see this with my own eyes to decipher the nightmare I stumbled into, having just laid my son to rest this morning. And last I checked, no one in a coffin since Tex. Driving to Richard's house was a surreal experience. My mind refused to accept the impossible. The familiar row of trees on the street looked unchanged, yet everything felt completely off. I'd been at the house just a couple of days ago, helping Olivia pack Richard's things for her so-called trip to Phoenix. She seemed shaken, or at least that's what I thought. The house loomed dark against the evening sky, save for a lone light glowing from the kitchen. Struggling to steady my hand, I used my spare key to enter. "Richard!" My voice cracked as I called out. Silence. I walked through the living room, past the couch where I'd embraced Olivia days ago when the hospital broke the devastating news, past the framed photos, Richard's graduation, their wedding, Christmas celebrations. Everything seemed unchanged, yet none of it made any sense now. The light in the kitchen pulled me in, and I froze at the sight before me. Richard was sitting there, very much alive, with a cup of coffee going cold. As his eyes met mine, I saw exhaustion etched into his face, dark circles under his eyes I'd never noticed before. He looked thinner, his clothes awkwardly loose. "Dad," he murmured, "I'm sorry." I was rooted to the spot, speechless, fighting to comprehend this. My son alive mere hours after his burial. "You're not supposed to be here," I finally whispered, my own voice sounding alien. Richard's expression twisted, full of desperation. "I know, Dad. It's crazy. Please take a seat. Let me explain." I stayed frozen, my legs refusing to cooperate. "I buried you today, Richard. Shoveled dirt onto your grave. Spoke at your funeral. What kind of sick joke is this?" "It's no joke," he replied softly, getting up with deliberate care. "Dad, this is serious. I'm in real trouble. The kind that threatens more than just me. It could destroy us. Everything we've built as a family." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice full of exasperation. I watched as he ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since he was a kid. "About 6 months ago, I made a massive mistake at work. I was handling the Meridian Industries account. You remember? The pharmaceutical account worth $2.5 million a year?" I nodded faintly. That account was practically all he talked about, how crucial it was for his firm's success. I found out they were rigging their drug trial results, hiding terrible side effects of a new arthritis medication. People were getting horribly sick. Some even died, his voice trembled. I should have blown the whistle then, but their CEO, James Crawford, offered me $500,000 to keep quiet, told me to ignore it, let the FDA. The approval process kept rolling, and my gut churned. "Please don't tell me you went through with it," I begged. Richard's silence said it all. "Richard, what were you thinking?" I couldn't help but stress over Olivia's shopping sprees, the hefty house mortgage, and all the debt piling up just to keep up appearances, he confessed. She kept pushing for those renovations, the shiny new car, that dream trip to Europe. That $500,000 could have been our lifeline. He looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I couldn't go through with it, Dad. I couldn't bear the thought of people dying just for money." "So what did you do?" I pressed him. Richard answered, "I turned to the FBI, handed over all the evidence, and decided to be a whistleblower. Barford got caught last month, and they yanked the drug off the shelves. But before they trapped him, he made sure I paid the price for turning on him." Richard strolled toward the kitchen window, peering into the darkness outside. "Crawford has connections, Dad. Dangerous ones. The type that never forgives or forgets. About 3 weeks ago, the threats began. Calls accusing me of wrecking lives and losing people heaps of money. They wanted me out of the picture. I felt my knees buckle as I collapsed into a chair. So you faked your own death? Dr. Peterson lent a hand, Richard continued. He's an old friend from college, now working at the hospital. We staged the heart attack and cooked up a fake death certificate. Peterson mentioned I had only a few hours before Crawford's crew closed in. It was our only shot. The story was piecing itself together, yet something still nagged at me. What about Olivia? When I called her, she was shattered, Richard said, his face hardening a bit. She cried on the phone, but she was in on it all, Dad. The Meridian account, the money I refused, the threats. She knew about the plan to stage my death. Richard's tone dropped to a whisper. She was supposed to pose as the grieving widow for half a year, then quietly meet me in Canada for a fresh start. But turns out she's in Cancun with Miguel. Richard let out a bitter, fractured chuckle. Yep, I saw her Instagram post too. She was meant to wait, Dad. We had it all mapped out, but clearly she didn't stick to it. I remembered that photo, Olivia's bright smile, and the cheerful remarks from her friends. She never intended to join you in Canada, did she? No, Richard said, realization dawning. That much became clear when I discovered she cashed in on the life insurance policy. A cool $750,000 went straight to my loving widow just yesterday. Richard turned back to me. She played the part flawlessly, didn't she? The shocked wife, the grieving widow, too distraught to even show up at the funeral. I bet she thought her no-show would add a layer of tragedy. The full weight of betrayal hit me like a blow. She let me bury an empty coffin and mourn while she plotted her getaway with her lover. I'm sorry, Dad, Richard expressed. I never wanted you to get caught in this mess. I thought if I just vanished, maybe everyone would be safer. But there's no way I can let her walk away with it. She betrayed us both, made you suffer while she lived it up. Seeing my son, thinner, worn out yet alive, something shifted inside me. The sorrow I'd been lugging around for 4 days was reshaping into a colder, steely resolve. What's next? I asked. Richard locked eyes with me, and for the first time since he came into the kitchen, I saw a spark of the determination that had served him well in business. Now we make sure she doesn't get her hands on that money and make her pay for what she put you through. How are we going to do that? A slow grin spread across Richard's face, revealing a side of him I hadn't fully appreciated. Well, Dad, legally speaking, I'm still dead, and Olivia is about to discover that being married to a dead man isn't all it's cracked up to be. He moved to the kitchen counter and drew out a laptop I hadn't seen before, handling it with the kind of practiced care of someone who'd been preparing for a long time. There's more you should know, Dad. Stuff I unearthed after I was dead. Opening the laptop, he turned the screen my way. Olivia didn't just plan to bail on me in Canada. Her plotting had started way before that. The screen revealed threads of emails, bank records, and text exchanges. Richard was really good at breaking things down, like he was pitching a business idea, and he patiently walked me through the screenshots. I'd noticed some money vanishing from our joint accounts lately. It began with small amounts, $200 here, $300 there. When I questioned Olivia about it, she said they were all for surprise anniversary presents. She wasn't exactly lying. It's just that the gifts weren't meant for me. Richard then showed me more pictures. This time there were images of expensive jewelry, designer bags, and receipts from fancy hotels. Olivia supposedly bought these during trips when she said she was visiting her sister in Phoenix or catching up with friends in Chicago. Apparently Miguel, our gardener, was more than just a landscaper. Olivia had been seeing him secretly for the last 8 months. Hotel receipts showed they met several times a week, all thanks to my credit card. The thought of it made my blood boil. She was using my money to cheat on me. Unbelievable. But it got worse and downright chilling. Richard continued, his voice steady, but his eyes showing his pain. When the FBI thing began, and I mentioned witness protection, Olivia didn't just agree to join. She jumped at the chance, calling it an adventure, a fresh start. Then Richard opened another folder. More incriminating screenshots, messages between Olivia and someone named Marcus from financial services. As I leaned in, I saw Olivia was already speaking to a private investigator, not to shield Richard from any harm, but to concoct a narrative that he was losing his grip on reality. I read Olivia's cold, calculated words depicting Richard as a wreck, anxious, drinking too much, and erratic since he blew the whistle. She wasn't just trying to make him seem unstable. She was setting up a scenario where his death would appear self-inflicted, like a man under unbearable pressure who finally succumbed. She'd even researched how to stage it as if he'd been planning it for a long time. Richard showed another file, this one stuffed with financial documents. Olivia had secretly taken out extra life insurance policies worth over $1 million. Each had clauses covering suicide, providing enough time had passed since being signed. For 2 years, way before anything happened with Meridian, Olivia had been setting the stage. She married Richard, persuaded him about the life insurance, and waited for the perfect moment to cash out. I felt dizzy just standing there. This wasn't simple infidelity or greed. It was pure malice, a plot to either drive Richard to his death or outright kill him, with the PI gathering evidence to back her story. A man under stress, with financial troubles and legal issues, history of depression, it would seem like an open and shut case. I got up and began pacing. Outside, everything looked calm and serene, while inside I was wrestling with the fact that my daughter-in-law was plotting something horrifying against my son. And still, Richard managed to fake his death first. That plan from Dr. Peterson turned out to be a surprising game changer. Olivia believed she had won, collecting the insurance money without actually committing murder. She could act the part of the grieving widow while pocketing her millions and running off with Miguel. Richard unveiled another screen showing her bank dealings. Insurance money deposited on Monday, 50 grand wired to Miguel on Tuesday, and by Wednesday morning, they were booking flights to Cancun. She fled the country thinking Richard's body was barely cold. But it wasn't, because Richard was very much alive. Here's where it got even more interesting. Olivia thought she was home free, but she had no clue Richard had gathered all the evidence before dying. He pulled up a file labeled Insurance Fraud Evidence, and my heart skipped. Everything was laid out: fake applications, unauthorized policies, payments to the private eye, and the whole affair with Miguel exposed. You won't even believe this, but Olivia did her homework on how to get away with murder while making it seem like an accident. She dove headfirst into all sorts of illegal activities: dad, insurance fraud, plotting my demise, theft, and having an affair, which wrecked her plan of skipping out on a divorce by making herself a widow. Richard snapped the laptop shut with a decisive click. So, what's our next move here? I sank back into my chair, my mind spinning. Well, we could always turn her in for the fraud, right? That's a possibility, but there's a snag. Richard leaned against the kitchen counter. You see, if I blow my cover and admit I'm alive, I'd have to confess to faking my death. Dr. Peterson might lose his license and even face jail time for tampering with the records. The FBI witness protection folks would go ballistic with me going off the grid. Plus, the people after me would suddenly have an open invitation to track me down. So we're in a bit of a pickle, not utterly stuck, but definitely in a tricky spot. We've got to outwit this situation. Richard sat back down, facing me directly. Olivia probably thinks she's hit the jackpot. She's got the money, the guy, and absolutely nothing to worry about. She's likely chilling in Mexico until the dust settles, planning to sell the house, cash out everything, and vanish. What's stopping her from doing just that? Legally, she can't touch the house or our shared assets while the world thinks I'm gone. Probate takes forever. But since she has the life insurance payout, she's banking on sitting pretty. Richard cracked a wry smile. Little does she know, I made sure to document all her shady deals before my death, and even a supposedly dead man can cause issues with insurance claims. I looked at Richard, seeing a side of him I never imagined before. My son had transformed from a stressed, anxious guy to someone calculating and strategic. So what's the plan, Richard? I'm letting Olivia enjoy her little Mexican holiday for a couple more weeks. Let her get comfortable, spend some money, dream a bit. Then I'm going to unravel every lie she's standing on. He reopened the laptop. See, I've already contacted the insurance companies with fraud alerts. Once an investigation starts, her accounts are frozen almost immediately. Can you even do that while officially dead? I set all of this up before dying, leaving instructions with my lawyer if certain events unfolded. As far as the insurers know, some voice from beyond suspected his wife of foul play and took measures to counter it. He showed me legal documents. I also changed my will the day before dying, cutting Olivia out completely due to infidelity and fishy financial behavior, leaving everything to you. Richard's plan left me speechless. You really thought this through? Well, almost everything. Didn't expect her to post party pics on Instagram just days after my funeral. That was a stroke of luck. Richard's grin was cold as ice. Those photos, coupled with the cash flowing to Miguel, seal the fraud case tight. And what's the deal with Miguel? He's part of this too, isn't he? Miguel. He's honestly the least of our problems. Just some guy who thought he'd hitched up with a wealthy widow. Once Olivia's funds are cut and the fraud charges hit, he'll disappear with them. Guys like him don't stick around for broke women with a criminal record. I observed Richard, feeling proud yet anxious. Richard, this is a dangerous game. What if Olivia finds out you're alive? Then we accelerate the plans. But right now she's too busy partying to even consider that. He closed the laptop yet again. You see, her biggest mistake was underestimating us both. She thought you'd just fall apart without question. She assumed I wasn't bold or brave enough to fight back. Richard looked at me with a newfound determination. She was wrong on both counts. A sense of resilience settled in me, stronger than anything I'd felt in years. What do you need from me, Richard? For now, just keep being the grieving father. Don't let on that anything's amiss. But when 2 weeks pass and her accounts are frozen and she comes knocking for answers, I need you to be ready. Richard's gaze was steady and serious. That's when we play our cards and show Olivia a game she never thought she'd play, and definitely not win. When Richard's funeral ended, it marked the start of the most prolonged 2 weeks I'd ever lived through. I had to act like a grieving father, all the while knowing my son was safe, stashed away in an apartment not far from us, living under a different name. The daily routine felt like balancing on a high wire, maintaining a facade of normalcy while secretly assisting Richard with what he referred to as Olivia's reckoning. Each week I made 2 trips to Richard's gravesite, doing the expected grieving father routine. I'd lay flowers gently, linger just long enough, and even engage in conversation with the headstone if I had an audience. It felt odd, mourning an empty coffin, but there was no other way. During these visits, neighbors and friends would often approach, offering their condolences and asking about Olivia. Mrs. Henderson from down the block questioned me once, saying, "Such a sad thing. How's Olivia holding up? I haven't come across her recently." Quick on my feet, I replied, "Oh, she's with family, getting the space she needs. It's been hard." What I didn't reveal was my constant monitoring of Olivia through her social media updates. There were photos of her enjoying life in Cancun, meals by the ocean, drinks against picturesque sunsets, spa indulgences, and shopping sprees. Miguel was frequently in the frame, either cuddling her or stealing kisses. What initially began as supportive messages from friends soon turned to comments that celebrated her path to recovery. Her sister even commented, "So proud of your choice to embrace happiness. Richard would want you to truly live." That last one really irked me. Meanwhile, Richard was busy at his hideout, sending loads of incriminating evidence to the insurance investigators. Photos with timestamps revealing Olivia's affair, sketchy financial moves, and all those social media posts flaunting her Mexican vacation just days after the funeral. In one of our secret meetups at a diner on the outskirts of town, Richard mentioned, "They're calling it one of the most clear-cut fraud cases they've seen." He looked healthier, finally rid of that worn-out expression and putting on some needed weight. 3 insurance companies, $1.7 million in bogus claims, and she's out there making it public, he continued. I queried, when is action being taken? Today. She's about to find all her accounts frozen by this afternoon. Come morning, she'll find herself locked out of her own money, he said, stirring his coffee. I reckon she's already splurged around $80,000 down there. Once the hotel bill can't be paid, reality's going to hit her like a truck. I wondered, what if she just stays in Mexico and disappears? Richard was confident. Not happening. Miguel doesn't have that kind of cash, and without those payouts, she's penniless. Once the cards fail, she'll have no choice but to come back and face the consequences. The following Thursday, my phone went wild with calls from Olivia's number, over and over. I let the voicemails stack up. They started with confusion. Timothy, something's wrong with my bank accounts. Call me. Then panic kicked in. Timothy, I'm stranded in Mexico. The hotel says my cards aren't working. I need cash, urgently. The final ones were desperate. Please, Timothy, I know you hear me. I'm scared. It's a nightmare, and I can't leave until I settle up. Please help. The next day, I let Richard hear these voicemails. His expression was a mix of stern resolve and the righteousness of justice being served. She's really panicking, I noted. And rightly so, Richard responded, shutting his laptop where he'd been tracking her unfolding predicament. Had an update from the FBI yesterday, through my lawyer who's representing my estate. They're interested in interviewing both me and Olivia concerning potential financial misconduct. They're waiting to pounce once she comes back stateside. So Mexican authorities are keeping Olivia over there for now, but not for much longer. They've told her she has to settle her debts before they let her leave. But how's she supposed to do that with no access to her funds? Richard just gave this eerie grin. That's where Miguel enters the scene. He's been all proud, boasting to his friends about his rich American girlfriend, flaunting pictures of the expensive gifts she gave him and the swanky hotels they stayed at. But yesterday, when the money flow stopped, so did his interest in Olivia. He jetted back to Chicago first thing this morning, leaving Olivia alone in a foreign land with no cash, no friends, and a heap of legal issues. Richard leaned back and said, I almost feel bad for her. Almost. But to be honest, I didn't. Whenever I pictured myself at an empty grave, shoveling dirt onto a coffin filled with just pillows, any hint of sympathy disappeared. When's she supposed to be back? I asked. Her flight's set for tomorrow evening, Richard replied. Olivia managed to contact her sister, who wired her just enough money for a plane ticket home, but she's walking into a whole new reality. Are you ready for this? I asked. Oh, I've been ready since those Instagram posts of her enjoying the beach while you were mourning an empty coffin. Richard's voice had a sharp edge. She disgraced you, Dad, left you to grieve alone while she splurged on our family's money with her boyfriend. That's something you can't forgive. And you're sure this plan's airtight? I questioned further. The insurance fraud is set. She can take a plea deal or face trial, but either way, she's looking at a serious sentence. She'll have to cough up everything she took, plus fines. Her name is tarnished, and she might end up with more debt than assets after everything's said and done. Richard looked out the diner window at the ordinary suburban scene. But the legal issues are just for starters, Dad. Real justice hits when everyone learns the truth. Her friends, family, our neighbors, they'll finally see she's no tragic widow. She's a con artist who tried to cash in on her husband's death while fooling around with another guy. She'll probably try to reach out once she's back. Let her. Remember, as far as you know, I'm still 6 feet under. You're just a grieving father, slowly uncovering what your daughter-in-law's been up to. Richard reached over and held my hand. I'm sorry, Dad, for making you keep up this act. I know it's hard. I gave his hand a squeeze back. Having you alive makes any pretense worthwhile. This nightmare's almost behind us. Once Olivia's caught and the truth is out, I can start piecing my life back together. Not easy, but Dr. Peterson has some connections with the authorities. And after that, the old life? I asked. That chapter's closed. Richard Morrison stays deceased on record. But Timothy Morrison's son? He gets a chance to start fresh, with a clean slate. Richard's tone softened. Maybe even with his dad, if you're up for moving and starting over. I thought about my empty house, my quiet retirement, the loneliness since Richard was thought dead. The idea of a fresh start, with my flesh and blood son beside me, was way more appealing than I cared to admit. We'll see, I said. First, we need to make sure Olivia gets what's coming to her. Richard smiled, but this time it was genuine. More than just the crafty grin he'd worn while putting this revenge scheme into motion. Oh, she will, Dad. She really will. The plane bringing Olivia home landed at 8:30 on a frosty Friday night. I knew because I'd been following its progress closely, just like how I'd been monitoring everything about her for the last couple of weeks. Richard and I spent the afternoon putting the final touches on our plan. He called it a confrontation or something like that. I was there, sprawled in the living room, pretending to watch TV when my phone buzzed at exactly 9:45. Olivia's number flashed on the screen. I let it ring for a while, like someone immersed in mourning, before finally picking it up on the fourth ring. Timothy, her voice crackled through, sounding downright exhausted. I'm so relieved you answered. I'm really sorry for not calling sooner. Mexico's phone coverage was awful, and then my flight got all tangled up. It's been a nightmare. Olivia, I replied, steadying my voice. I was beginning to wonder when you'd return. I'm at the house, but I can't get in. The key's not working, and there's some kind of note stuck on the door, but it's too dark to make it out. Her voice wavered slightly. Could you come by? I realize it's late, but I don't want to be here by myself. I glanced at the clock. Everything seemed to be unfolding according to plan. Just earlier, a locksmith hired by Richard had changed the locks, and that note on the door was from the FBI, letting her know the house was wrapped up in a fraud investigation. I'll be there in about 20 minutes, I promised her. Thank you, Timothy. I don't know what I'd do without you now. You're all I have with Richard. Her voice faded, and she made a sound that could have been a sob or just weariness. Driving to Richard's felt oddly surreal. I'd made this journey countless times for family dinners, holidays, house maintenance, or dog sitting when they traveled. But tonight felt different. For weeks, I had felt this moment coming. Seeing Olivia on the porch was like a slap of reality. She wasn't the vibrant woman from those Cancun pictures. Her hair was thrown into a messy ponytail, her face ghostly pale and drawn. Her clothes were crumpled like she'd slept in them. Her eyes were red, from tears or exhaustion. I wasn't sure. Timothy, thanks for coming, she said, rushing to hug me. I pulled away just enough for it to register. She looked at me, confused. Let's look at that notice, I suggested, stepping past her to check the door. The FBI paper was full of official-sounding language about freezing assets and investigations. I read it carefully, sneaking glances at Olivia. She was pacing, wrapping her arms around herself. I don't get this, she sighed. Why's the FBI interested in Richard's death? Wasn't it just a heart attack? Nothing more? I finally turned to her under the dim porch light. She looked even more worn out than I'd imagined, with dark circles under her eyes and hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Olivia, where have you been these last few weeks? I told you, I was with my sister in Phoenix, trying to cope and find some peace. Her lie rolled off her tongue like she'd rehearsed it. Then I spent a few days in Mexico. My doctor thought it might help lift my spirits a bit. Mexico, I repeated, my voice flat. It was just for a short while, she said, her tone firm as if she believed what she was saying. Sarah was convinced a change of scene would help me move past Richard's death. Her confidence surged back. I know it seems odd, but I was shattered, Timothy, drowning in memories and had to get away. I nodded, attempting a sympathetic look. I understand. Everyone has their way of handling grief. Her features softened, relief washing over her. Exactly. I knew you'd see my side. Pointing toward the house, she continued, but this with the FBI and the locks, it's beyond confusing. We need answers. I pulled out my phone. I have Richard's lawyer's contact. Maybe he can shed some light. Yes, call him. There's got to be some misunderstanding. I punched in the number Richard had given me for his attorney. David Chen knew our plan and was ready for my call. He answered on the second ring. David, it's Timothy Morrison. I'm here with Olivia, and we've come across an FBI notice at Richard's place regarding some investigation, I said, pausing for him to respond. Uh-huh. Okay. And when did this happen? While I listened, Olivia crept closer, trying to glean what was being discussed. I subtly leaned away, keeping the conversation just between David and me. You get that's illegal, right? I said, upping the volume so she couldn't miss it. What do you mean insurance fraud? The color drained from Olivia's cheeks the moment I mentioned it, and she clutched onto me. What are you talking about? I motioned for her to hang on as I kept listening to David. He's bringing up multiple policies, unauthorized applications, I said, eyeing Olivia. Listen, David, Olivia's standing right here, and she's saying she has no idea about any of this. Her voice started to rise, showing her panic. There's FBI evidence that someone faked Richard's signature on a load of life insurance forms, I carried on. Huge policies Richard supposedly put together without a whisper to anyone. They think it ties back to his death. Olivia tried to keep herself together as she replied, That's crazy. Richard had a heart attack. The doctors confirmed it, she insisted. I kept pushing David. What kind of financial oddities? Spell it out. There was a pause, then David spoke about money transfers to unauthorized folks and strange spending habits. Olivia's hands began trembling. Tell him he's wrong, Timothy. I'm clueless about insurance fraud or any financial funny business. David was interested in her whereabouts over the last fortnight, so I asked, Turns out the FBI's curious about some chunky cash withdrawals just after Richard died. I was grieving, she blurted. I was with my sister. But she didn't sound convinced. Now he's telling me they're checking out your social media. Pictures from Cancun? I let that hang in the air. Olivia's face went ghostly as if a secret had just slipped. Were you in Cancun and not Phoenix with your sister? I challenged her. I can straighten this out, she stumbled. After Phoenix, I needed more healing time. Sarah said Mexico might do me good, but her story wasn't holding water. Why was it therapeutic? I threw back at her, just like I'd said Mexico. Did Miguel help you with the healing too? She was speechless, weighed down by my words. How did you find out about Miguel? She stammered. The FBI showed me photos, Olivia. You in Cancun with another man. Pictures on the web while I was laying my son to rest. My voice turned icy. Shots of you celebrating with your lover on Richard's insurance money. She started crying then, more panic than remorse. Timothy, please, I cared for Richard. Marriage isn't easy. He was distant, always uptight. Miguel? He was a beacon when things were hard, she pleaded. A beacon you were seeing for 8 months? I accused. Reality began to dawn on her. Look, I made some bad choices, but Richard's gone. Can we try to look ahead? I stared at this woman, who had been part of our family for 8 years, whom I'd protected during her squabbles with Richard, and who had wept in my arms just days after his demise. You're right, Olivia, I said. We can't change what's past. But here's the truth. You let me mourn alone while celebrating Richard's death in Mexico. I turned to leave. The FBI will be in touch. Get yourself a good lawyer. With a final glance at her, I added, You should have thought of this before you tried to bank on Richard's death. As I drove off, I saw her collapse onto the steps, alone and cut off. But things weren't over. Not for Richard either. 20 minutes later, I reached Richard's temporary place. Through the window, there he was, all tense. How'd she take it? He asked as I got upstairs to the second-floor apartment. Scared, worn out, cornered, I replied. Settling into his cramped living room, I added, At first, she tried to fib. When I brought up the FBI snapshots and Miguel's part, she just broke. Good. It's high time she realizes there's a price to pay. Richard was pacing, practically fizzing with tension. Tomorrow morning, she's going to wake up to FBI agents at whatever motel she's in. They'll nab her for insurance fraud, and that's just the start of her troubles. Are you set for what's coming? Richard suddenly halted his pacing and fixed his eyes on me. Dad, I've been gone, considered dead for 2 weeks, I admitted to him. But tomorrow I'll be back, alive and kicking, and we'll finally see the fallout of her betrayal. His expression was solemn yet resolved, and it was clear he was more ready than he'd ever been. A gentle snow began to blanket the parking lot as we spoke, signaling a pivotal moment in our well-laid plan. Olivia was about to learn just how costly her disloyalty would be. At dawn on Saturday, the FBI nabbed Olivia at a cheap motel. I missed the scene, but Richard knew someone on the inside who updated him. Supposedly, she tried to bolt when they came knocking. Not that there was anywhere to run in a cramped motel room. Later that day, Richard and I met at the diner where we'd been strategizing for the last fortnight. He seemed different somehow, like a massive weight had been lifted off his shoulders. They've got her on insurance fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering charges, he mentioned, stirring his now tepid coffee as we awaited more news. They've set her bail at $500,000. Think she can post bail? I asked, the curiosity getting to me. Not a chance, Richard said. Her accounts are locked down, and she blew her credit on that Cancun trip. Miguel made himself scarce when her cash dried up. Her sister might want to help, but there's no way Sarah has that kind of money just lying around. Picturing Olivia in a cell, perhaps still in her travel-worn clothes, left no room for sympathy. Just 2 weeks ago, I might have felt differently, but now justice felt incredibly sweet. So when do you officially come back from the dead? I probed. For the first time in forever, Richard broke into a real smile. This afternoon, Dr. Peterson has arranged everything with the hospital and authorities. They'll say it was an identity mix-up, and I was in a coma, not dead, and have now had a miraculous recovery. Think people will buy that? I wondered aloud. Doesn't matter if they do, said Richard. The key thing is, it's all properly documented legally and medically. Dr. Peterson has friends backing him up, and the hospital's lawyers are handling it as a medical error. No accusations of fraud. He leaned in, emphasizing his point. Once I'm alive again in the eyes of the law, every insurance claim Olivia filed becomes null and void. She'll have to repay it all, with interest and penalties. She's facing serious prison time. How long are we talking? I pressed. David figures 10 to 15 years, especially if she doesn't cooperate with their further investigations into other fraudulent policies. Richard's expression grew more intense, yet he added, she'll cooperate. She'll be forced to, once she learns a few things about her precious Miguel. What things? I asked, intrigued. Miguel wasn't just fooling around with a married woman. He was conning lonely wives in affluent areas, tricking them into committing insurance scams against their husbands. Olivia was just another in his series. The third one, actually. The FBI's been watching him for a year and a half. Understanding just how foolish Olivia had been was almost too much. She thought outsmarting Richard was her game, but Miguel had been outplaying her from the start, using her as nothing more than a pawn. Exactly, Richard nodded. Miguel probably nudged her into upping the insurance, guided her in making Richard's death look natural, maybe even supported that mental illness angle. She thought she was the predator, only to find out she was prey to someone far more dangerous. Where's Miguel now? I asked, curiosity piqued. Mexico, maybe Costa Rica, someplace without an extradition treaty. But the FBI will catch up with him eventually, Richard speculated, looking out through the diner window into the dreary October day. The main thing is, Olivia's about to realize she was the one getting duped. She threw away 8 years of marriage, with her life in shambles and her future in a cell, all for a dude who didn't give a damn about her. At 2 p.m. that day, I made my way to the hospital to see my son return to us. Dr. Peterson met me in the lobby, looking determined yet a tad uneasy. He was risking his career to help Richard, unable to just stand by and let a good man be destroyed by a cunning wife. You set for this, Timothy? He asked as we moved to the elevator. I've been set for this for weeks, I returned confidently. Richard's hospital room was up on the 4th floor, the very place where they'd mistakenly thought he had passed away just weeks earlier. When I entered, he was propped up in bed, clad in a hospital gown, looking as frail and dazed as you'd expect from someone just out of a coma. His voice wavered when he spoke. Dad, what happened? I remember this intense chest pain, and then nothing. His performance was convincing, and even though I knew it was all orchestrated, it was still a comfort to hear him speak. You've been in a coma, son. We thought you were gone, I told him. Right on cue, Dr. Peterson stepped in, carrying a clipboard and wearing an apologetic expression. Mr. Morrison, there has been a grave mistake with the patient IDs. Your son wasn't deceased. It was a catatonic state that mimicked death. Our systems failed, and staff misidentified him. But there was a funeral, I replied, staying in character. Yes, and I can't apologize enough for the turmoil this has caused you all. The hospital will cover any costs from this error, and we're conducting a thorough investigation to prevent it from happening again, Dr. Peterson promised. Richard gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Dad, I'm sorry. I can't even picture what you went through. The important thing is you're back with us now, I said. I turned to Dr. Peterson and asked, when can he be discharged? He'll need a few more days of observation to confirm there are no lingering effects from the coma, Peterson noted on his clipboard. Also, we have to notify your son's wife about his recovery. Well, about that, I began carefully. Olivia was taken into custody this morning on charges of insurance fraud. Richard's eyes widened, appearing genuinely surprised. Arrested? What's going on? He asked. While you were unconscious, she filed several life insurance claims. She'd secretly taken out multiple policies, aiming to cash in, I explained, studying his reaction intently. The FBI says she had help from a guy named Miguel. Miguel? Our gardener? Richard seemed genuinely baffled. Dad, this isn't adding up, he said, clearly overwhelmed. Dr. Peterson cleared his throat. Mr. Morrison may need some rest. It's a lot to absorb at once. No, I need to get to the bottom of this, Richard insisted, attempting to sit up straight. Olivia tried to collect life insurance payouts while I was unconscious? She assumed you were dead, son. We all did, because of the hospital's error, but apparently she'd been scheming for some time. I showed him photos from her social media in Cancun, taken while I was making funeral arrangements. She was in Mexico having a ball with Miguel, thinking she was in the clear. Richard scanned the pictures, shifting from shock to hurt to anger. For 8 months, she'd been cheating, the FBI says. She tried to steal from me by pretending I was dead. She wasn't pretending, Richard. She really believed you were gone. But no, she wasn't mourning, I said. The FBI uncovered that she had planned this long before your accident. She might have even wished for something to happen to you. Richard sank back, devastated. 8 years of marriage, Dad, and she schemed to make a profit off my death. I'm so sorry, son. It's a lot to process when you're still recovering, I said. No, I need to know it all, Richard affirmed with newfound determination. So what's next for her? Prison, very likely. Insurance fraud alone could get her 10 years, and if they find she plotted with Miguel to target other victims, her sentence could extend, I explained. Dr. Peterson checked the time. I'll leave you two to talk. Mr. Morrison, I'll come back later. Once the doctor left, Richard and I just stayed there, soaking in the silence for a short while. The ordeal was finally over. My son was back with us, and Olivia was now facing the consequences of her lies. I turned to him and asked, "How are you feeling?" He replied simply, "Free. For the first time in who knows how long, I feel truly free." His eyes wandered to the city bustling outside the window. I can't just jump back to how things were before, though. With all the buzz about the hospital slip-up, people will always wonder. But now I get the chance to start over. Remember that whole Meridian scandal? Crawford's bunch? Crawford didn't make it out of jail. Heart attack got him. The FBI dismantled his whole ring, so they're done. Plus, I have a clean slate and a new identity now. I should be good. Richard seemed pretty excited at the prospect. Coming back as Richard Morrison, the guy who died and then didn't, isn't an option. But maybe as Timothy Morrison's son, Robert, I could set up some consulting work in a sunnier place than Chicago. I had to admit, the idea of relocating was appealing. Robert Morrison, it really does have a nice sound to it. What about you, Dad? Are you ready for a new chapter too? I pondered over my empty house, retired life, and the constant loneliness. But then I thought about the past few weeks fighting alongside Richard to make things right. It gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. Robert Morrison is going to need a business partner, I suggested. Someone with some experience, who knows how to steer through the tricky waters of consulting. Richard smiled wide. Glad you'd say that. 3 months later, Robert Morrison Consulting was already making headway in Charlotte, North Carolina. The business cards flaunted Robert as CEO and Timothy Morrison as senior partner. We focused on guiding companies through ethical dilemmas and fraud prevention, a field we knew all too well. Olivia got 12 years in a federal prison after copping to insurance fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. They eventually nabbed Miguel in Guatemala too, bringing him back to answer for scamming at least 6 families. Insurance recovered most of the money Olivia took, even though she had burned through nearly 100 grand living it up while she could. On the date marking the anniversary of what was once Richard's supposed demise, we visited the cemetery. Beneath a stone bearing my son's name lay an empty coffin. We placed flowers, not as a joke, but as a reminder of how close we'd come to forever losing each other. "Do you ever regret it?" Richard asked, thinking about all Olivia went through. I considered it carefully. "I'm sorry things ended up here. Sorry she made those choices. But I can't apologize for shielding our family from someone who would have destroyed us without a second thought." Richard nodded. He got it. Olivia had her chances to be honest, to work through things, to build a life with us. But she chose deceit and betrayal, and now she's living with those choices. On the walk back to the car, I reflected on how much can change in a year. I lost a son, only to have him returned. We parted ways with a daughter-in-law, freeing ourselves from her manipulation. Gone was what I thought would be a quiet retirement, but I found a renewed mission, a new business, and importantly, a rekindled relationship with the son I almost lost forever. Olivia tried to profit from Richard's death, yet ironically, his return gifted us both a fresh start. Justice has a way of showing up unexpectedly.